When India puts a spacecraft on Mars, why does the world still call them poor? When Indian soldiers are murdered in deliberate terror attacks, why do headlines reduce their sacrifice to clinical terms like blast or explosion instead of calling it what it is? And why is it that every time India achieves something great, there's always a but attached to it? You know what? The answer isn't in the news. It's in a game that's been played against India for hundreds of years. This is about how words became weapons, how headlines became battlefields, and how one nation keeps fighting a war that most people don't even realize is happening. Let me tell you the truth they don't want you to hear. Look, when the British came to India, they didn't just bring guns and ships. They brought something more dangerous, a story. A lie, actually. They called it a civilizing mission. Their story was simple. India is backward, India is chaotic, India needs them to fix it. But here's what was really happening. While they told the world they were helping India, they were looting the country. Gold, diamonds, spices, cloth, everything was being shipped to England. And you know how much they took? Research shows it was worth about $45 trillion. dollars. 45 trillion. That's 15 times what the entire UK economy makes today in a whole year. Just think about that for a second. For hundreds of years, they robbed India. And then, and this is the cruel part, they turned around and called India poor. They changed the country's identity. Through schools, churches, newspapers, they spread one message. Britain did India a favor by ruling them. Now the British left decades ago. But you know what didn't leave? That mindset, that thinking. Many Western countries still believe they're the world's teachers. They think democracy, progress, ethics, all of this belongs to them. And the rest? They're just students learning from the West. But here's what they can't digest. Today's India is not the India they left behind. Listen to this. Today, India is the world's fourth largest economy. In space, India is doing things that only a few elite countries could do before. In defense, India is not buying weapons anymore. The country is selling them. And in digital technology, brother, the whole world is now copying India's UPI system, India's digital payment model. But does Western media celebrate this? No. Instead, they look for the negative angle in every positive story, every single time. Remember 2014, when India became the first Asian country to reach Mars? A big American newspaper published a cartoon. It showed an Indian farmer with a cow knocking on the door of the Space Club. Can you believe that? India achieved something incredible in science, and they mocked the nation. They still saw India as a poor country with cows. That colonial thinking is still alive in their minds. And when Chandrayaan-3 landed on the moon successfully, and that too at a cost that was a fraction of what America spends, what did they write? India lands on moon, but Indian people are still poor and hungry. Every achievement, every success, there's always a poverty line attached to it, always a disclaimer. This isn't journalism, my friend. This is a calculated attack on India's image. You know what makes me really angry? The way they show India visually. Whenever there's a Western documentary or movie about India, what do they show? Broken walls, crowds, slums, children playing in mud, half-naked people on streets. That's their India. But do they ever show Mumbai's Bandra Kurla complex, the glass towers of Gurgaon, the IT hubs of Bangalore and Hyderabad? No, because that doesn't fit their story. That doesn't match the image they want to sell. And here's the thing. Many Western influencers come to India deliberately looking for exotic poverty. They find some small village, some old custom, record it with dramatic music, and say this is the real India. I'll give you an example. Recently, a foreign channel showed a small village where some people have a tradition with cow dung. It's one tiny village, one specific cultural practice. 95% of Indians don't even know about that place or that custom. But that video went viral and became India's image to millions of people worldwide. Do they show Ayodhya lit up during Diwali? No. Do they show the beautiful skyline of Delhi or Mumbai? No. Do they show the innovation happening in Chennai and Hyderabad? No. They only want to show poverty. It satisfies their colonial fantasy. Indian Foreign Minister Jaishankar said it perfectly. The West doesn't stay silent about India's goodness because they can't see it. They simply don't want to see it. And he's absolutely right. Now let's talk about how they attack India's economy with headlines. A rising India is a threat to Western economic power. That's the truth. Organizations like IMF, World Bank, they all say India is the fastest growing major economy in the world right now. India is breaking records in manufacturing, services, exports, startups, defense. When many Western economies were in recession or zero growth, India was growing at 6.8%. But what do Western headlines say? India's growth is not sustainable. India's economy is slowing down. Unemployment crisis. Debt trap coming. Data says India is rising. Headlines say India is just surviving. See the difference? And it's not just about the country. When Indian companies go global, they face the same bias. Tata, Reliance, Infosys, Adani, these companies are competing internationally in energy, tech, infrastructure, retail. But as soon as an Indian company grows big, Western media suddenly starts calling them too political or too risky. And the timing? Always suspicious. Look at what happened in October. Just before Bihar elections and Parliament's winter session, an American newspaper, the Washington Post, published a big report. They said the Indian government forced LIC to invest 33,000 crore rupees in Adani Group, and that LIC took huge risks by doing this. But when you actually look at the facts, the whole report falls apart. LIC immediately said the report is completely false and baseless. They said clearly, all their investment decisions are independent. There's no government interference. Even LIC's former chairman called the report misleading and asked them to take it back. And there was a major factual mistake in the report. They said Adani needed money to repay old debt, but actually the money was raised for a bond buyback program. Completely different things. Plus, LIC invests in many private companies. It's normal. Under CB rules, LIC can invest in AAA-rated companies. The amount they invested in Adani Ports was almost the same as what they invested in Hero Motocorp at the same time. So it's not special or unusual. And here's the best part. LIC is getting 1.26% higher returns on this investment compared to government bonds. They expect to make an extra profit of about 950 crore rupees. LIC's total assets are more than 55 lakh crore rupees, and their investment in Adani Group is less than 0.3% of that. 0.3%. What the Washington Post called high risk is actually a tiny, profitable part of LIC's normal investment strategy. So why did they publish this report, and why at that specific time? Makes you think, doesn't it? This is the pattern. Sharp, scary headline, but weak facts inside. No proper context. This is how they operate. Now let me tell you something that will make your blood boil. When a terror attack happens in a Western country, what do they call it? Terror attack. Simple and clear. But when the same attack happens in India, they use words like explosion or gunmen fired. The 2019 Pulwama attack is the biggest example. A terrorist organization, Jaish-e-Mohammed, openly took responsibility for the attack. They admitted it. 40 Indian soldiers were martyred. But the New York Times called it an explosion in their report. An explosion. Just an explosion. The sacrifice of 40 brave soldiers reduced to just an explosion. But when a truck driver ran over people in Manhattan in 2017, the same newspaper immediately called it the deadliest terror attack. When the victims are theirs, it's terrorism. When Indian soldiers die, it's an explosion. After massive outrage, they quietly changed the words on social media. Same thing happened in April 2025 during the Pahalgam terror attack. 26 innocent tourists were killed, murdered. But what words did Western media use? Militants, gunmen, assailants, as if it was just some small fight, not a planned terrorist massacre. They choose these soft words deliberately so that the impact of these attacks looks smaller to the world, and it gets worse. When India responds to these attacks, when India fights back, that's when the real propaganda war starts. Take Operation Sindoor. When India destroyed terrorist training camps and launch pads, and then when Pakistan tried to retaliate, India destroyed their 11 air bases with precise airstrikes. Clear military victory, right? But the battle didn't end on the battlefield. Pakistan immediately started spreading fake photos, old aircraft crashes, burned jets, doctored videos. And guess what? Many Western news channels started showing these unverified images. They published them without checking, just saying, reported by sources. This is modern perception war. Something else happens on the ground, but something completely different is shown in headlines around the world. Here's another thing that shows their hypocrisy clearly. When India sent corona vaccines to over 100 countries through Vaccine Maitri, did India get big coverage in Western media? No. When India helped get African Union a permanent seat in G20, did they celebrate it? No. But any protest in India, any policy criticism, that becomes headline news immediately. When there are riots in the UK or violent protests in France, how do they describe it? Civil unrest, domestic issue, normal, calm language. But if there's any disagreement in India, suddenly it becomes crisis of democracy and freedom under threat. This double standard is so clear. It's not about how serious the news is. It's about where it happened. That's what decides how big it becomes. And they do something else too. They try to find divisions in India, religion, regions, politics, and then sensationalize them. In 2019, Time magazine put PM Modi's photo on the cover with big bold letters, India's divider-in-chief. There was small text below saying, Modi the reformer, but it was so small you could barely see it. Your eyes only caught divider-in-chief. The funny thing? The same magazine called Manmohan Singh the underachiever in 2012. It doesn't matter which government is there. The target is always India's reputation. Now this is where it gets really interesting, because detailed research has been done on this bias. The Indian Institute of Mass Communication prepared a report called Analysis of Global Media Coverage of Events in India. They analyzed more than 3,000 stories from major international publications: The New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, Time Magazine, The Guardian, BBC. The results were shocking. The report clearly showed bias, exaggeration, and sensationalism in how Western media covers India. They analyzed 500 headlines. And you know what the most used words were? Fear, hate, violence, riot, Hindu, Muslim, Kashmir, cow, mob, protest. Their agenda is crystal clear. They want to always show India through the lens of conflict, religion, and chaos. But here's the really dirty part. This fear-based coverage actually increased their readership in India massively. India is now the world's third largest market for English digital news, and they figured out how to make money from Indian readers. Between March 2019 and March 2021, Time magazine's Indian readers increased by 50%, while globally their readership fell by 31%. Wall Street Journal's Indian readership grew 101%, more than doubled. The New York Times saw 22% growth in India, but globally it decreased by 8%. And BBC, their Indian readership jumped by 173%. Let that sink in. The more they wrote India under threat, the more traffic they got from Indian readers. The more fear and hate they spread about India, the more money they made from Indians clicking on their articles. They understood that controversy sells, that fear sells. So in the name of journalism, they made it their business model. The report called this hit-and-run journalism. Sensational headlines go viral, but the actual content inside has no solid facts, no proper sources, just anonymous statements and assumptions. The report's conclusion was clear. These foreign media outlets care more about money and market share than journalistic honesty. It's not about truth, it's about business. There's another side to this dirty game. Anti-India voices are rewarded and celebrated in the name of journalism. Recently, an Indian journalist named Sana Irshad Mattu got the Pulitzer Prize. Western media called her a brave journalist, but if you look at her articles and social media, it's clear her work is more propaganda than journalism. In her Kashmir reporting, she justifies terrorist narratives in the name of human rights. She constantly shows India's security forces in a negative light. She uses the same language that Pakistan uses. And for this, she gets a Pulitzer Prize. And she's not alone. If you look at the 2024 Pulitzer Prize finalists for international reporting, most of them have targeted India in their work. Almost every report shows India in a negative way. One of these finalists was Pranav Verma. He co-wrote that Adani Washington Post report talked about earlier. This has become a pattern. It's not just journalism anymore. It's a reward system. Western institutions, media houses, award committees, they reward stories that make India look bad. If you show India as weak, divided, or corrupt on the global stage, you become a courageous voice. But here's the sad truth. For this foreign propaganda to work, it needs an echo from inside India. And unfortunately, that echo exists. Some Indian journalists, NGOs, commentators, whether for funding, ideology, or international validation, they present these Western narratives as authentic Indian voices. And that's how global propaganda gets local credibility. Many people unknowingly become part of this Western agenda. They don't realize they're helping defame their own country. Many start trusting foreign reports more than India's own data and institutions. The job of journalism is to show facts, not create perceptions. But many Western media channels don't do journalism anymore. They do propaganda. Criticism is necessary, it's healthy. But when it becomes one-sided and biased, it stops being journalism. When Western media judges India, I want to ask them some questions. Do you apply the same standards to yourselves? Do you write equally loud headlines about the crimes of your colonial past? Do you say democracy in danger about your own racism, social divisions, and refugee problems? This is the same India they used to mock as the land of snake charmers. So now when India's progress is undeniable, they always add some weird disclaimer to it. You know what? The time has come to understand something fundamental about this entire propaganda game. When Western media judges India, ask yourself, do they ever apply the same harsh lens to themselves? When was the last time you saw a big Western headline screaming, "Democracy in danger," about their own countries? When do they write emotional stories about the atrocities of their colonial past, the millions who died, the civilizations they destroyed, the wealth they looted? When do they show the same concern about their internal racism, their social divisions, their refugee crises, their own problems? They don't, because the rules are different when it comes to judging themselves versus judging India. But let's talk about what makes India truly special. This is a country where diversity isn't just a word. It's the reality of everyday life. Religion, culture, language, ethnicity. There's so much variety that every single state feels like a completely different world. In some countries, people fight over one or two languages. India has 22 official languages and hundreds of dialects. Some nations struggle with two or three major religions. India is home to almost every major religion in the world living together. And you know what's incredible? In just 77 years since independence, this massively diverse country has risen from the depths of colonial poverty to become the world's fourth largest economy. Think about that timeline. 77 years ago, India was called poor, backward, underdeveloped. Today, India is a space power, a nuclear power, a digital leader, an economic giant. And perhaps, just perhaps, this is exactly what bothers the Western media the most. This is the same India they used to mock and dismiss as the land of snake charmers. The same India they said would never survive as a democracy because it's too diverse. The same India they predicted would break apart because of its differences. But India didn't just survive. India thrived. India proved them wrong at every single step. So now, when they talk about India's development, when they can't deny India's achievements anymore, they add strange disclaimers. They attach buts and howevers to every success story. They search for the negative angle in every positive news. Because accepting India's rise means accepting that their colonial theories were wrong. It means accepting that their civilizing mission was just a lie to justify theft and oppression. And that acceptance? That's too bitter a pill for them to swallow. But here's the beautiful truth that no propaganda can hide. India's progress isn't happening because of Western approval. It's happening despite Western criticism. When they said India couldn't reach Mars, India did it, and at a fraction of the cost. When they said India's digital payment system wouldn't work, UPI became a model for the world. When they said India couldn't handle a massive vaccination drive, India delivered billions of doses, both at home and to other countries. Every prediction they made about India's failure turned into another Indian success story. So honestly, it's time to stop caring about what Western media writes about India. It's time to stop waiting for their validation. It's time to stop letting their headlines define how Indians see their own country. Because no matter how much propaganda they spread, how many biased reports they publish, how many negative headlines they print, truth can never be defeated. Truth has a way of emerging, no matter how deep you try to bury it. And the truth is simple and powerful. The era when India's identity was decided by someone else's headlines is over. Finished. Done. Those days are gone forever and they're never coming back. This truth cannot be changed by propaganda. This truth cannot be suppressed by biased journalism. This truth cannot be killed by 1,000 negative articles. India's real story is not being written in the editorial rooms of the New York Times or the Washington Post or the Guardian. India's story is being written every single day in Indian laboratories where scientists work on groundbreaking research, in Indian factories where workers manufacture products for the world, in Indian startups where young entrepreneurs build the next big innovation, in Indian villages where farmers feed not just India, but export to other nations, in Indian cities where the future is being built with Indian hands and Indian minds. This story is being written by Indian scientists who put satellites in space and rovers on the moon, by Indian farmers who turned the country from a food importing nation to a food exporting powerhouse, by Indian entrepreneurs who built companies that now compete with anyone in the world, by Indian soldiers who stand guard at the borders so that the nation can sleep peacefully, by Indian doctors, teachers, engineers, artists, and ordinary citizens who contribute to the nation's progress in their own way. The world is watching India now, and they're not watching through the distorted colonial-era lens anymore. They're watching through the clear evidence of a great civilization reclaiming its rightful place on the global stage. They're watching through the undeniable proof of what happens when a nation believes in itself. The question was never whether Western media will change their narrative about India. They might not. They probably won't. Their business model depends on controversy and fear. Yes, India will keep rising. Yes, India will keep succeeding. Yes, India will keep writing its own story, not in their language, not by their rules, but in its own unique way, because that's what India has always done. That's what India is doing now, and that's what India will continue to do. Can propaganda defeat truth? Can colonial mindsets stop a civilization that's been here for thousands of years? I don't think so. History has already given us the answer.